Here I'll show you how I create a bright painting using PanPastels. Now I already have my drawing here, but essentially what I used is a China marker to lay in my darkest areas and give me an idea of where things need to go in this painting. I can cover that in another video if anybody is interested. But for the most part, it's just laying in those shadows. I like to be loose and free, not try to be too precious or precise with this part. And I like the China marker because it does move a little bit, but it doesn't move all that much when you're using PanPastels over the top. A lot of times if you're using charcoal, you can seal it in with rubbing alcohol, but otherwise it will move when you add the PanPastel on the top. One thing I like to note is that when using PanPastel, this is not dirty necessarily, it's stained. Actually, this one may be dirty. Let's check. The way that you decide is by getting a paper towel. I do recommend not just regular kitchen paper towels, but getting Rags in a Box or a hardware brand because they're softer, so they make your sponges last way longer. So this is a soft sponge. The brand soft is spelled with 2 F's. All right, so yeah, nothing is coming off of that. So as soon as you use your sponge for the first time, it will be stained, but you can continue to use these until they fall apart. Now I have all 20 of the original painting colors here for PanPastel, but you'll probably notice, I have a new one of these, but the colors that I'm going to use are basically this line right here. I love using bright colors. I don't think I'll ever get away from that. But the other thing I like to do is either use these colors and let it stand on its own, or use these colors as an underpainting and put natural colors over the top. If I get really tech savvy, I'll learn to add that into the video so you can see some of the examples of work I've done in that way. This lighthouse picture was taken from Free Reference Photos for Artists page on Facebook. So if you are looking for references to draw from, I recommend Unsplash website, Pixabay, Pexels. All of those websites are good. You can honestly just Google Free Reference Photos for Artists and the options will come up. But there are also several very good Facebook references Facebook groups where photographers share amazing reference photos that you can use for drawing from. So this lighthouse is one. I can't share the original picture because it is from a Facebook group, but it is a beautiful sunset picture with the lighthouse in front of it, as I have the drawing here. And because I think I'm going to lean more towards yellows, oranges, and pinks for this, I'm actually going to start by laying in where I want to have some turquoise. On my website, it's mollyvandelistart.com. You can actually see I've done this one large before, so you can kind of see where I'm headed with this. I just love the way the bright colors make the lighthouse, I don't know, it brings out almost that strength and personality of the lighthouse, that light in the darkness feel. So I'm just laying in the places where I want this vibrant turquoise. Actually, I think I'm just going to fill this in. PanPastel is a medium that works best in layers. So any place that you want, we'll say the main color to stand out, that's probably the first color you want to put down. So since I want this to be mostly this turquoise color, I'm going to fill it in more. We'll put a little there for the light itself. I like that cool light. Let's do a little light on the horizon. I was actually planning to do a different picture today, but I was pulling out this foam board to use as a backing and found this picture already drawn on it. This is from when I was teaching a class using PanPastel to a special needs group. And so I drew all the pictures on the paper ahead of time so that all they needed to do was really just play with the PanPastel and the color. I don't know how you feel if you're watching this and you're looking for specific techniques on how to draw, or if you're like, nope, I just want to get it in color. I want to play with the medium, the PanPastels, whatever the case may be, if it's pencils or paints. I just want to get in there and add the color. If you prefer to have drawings that are already complete, that are printable, or if you prefer to learn the actual drawing process yourself, let me know in the comments, because this is all new to me. So I'm just going in. I like to do one color at a time to start. Not that I won't necessarily go back and forth as I get into the refining stage, but right now is just all about adding color. This color where I want it. And I will say this is using I believe it's UArt sanded paper. I can't remember what grade it is. It's probably on the back. I might be able to sneak a peek. Nope. So I had a roll of this sanded paper, and I did love it for the fact that I could have a lot of it at once and I could just cut it to what I need. But honestly, I feel like it doesn't quite hold the layers that I like to do. I have one extreme or another in the way I like to paint. I either like to paint on like a Reeves BFK or a watercolor paper where I can only do one layer and I can't do any more, or I like the complete opposite where I like to use a pastel matte paper which holds just an absolute ton of layers. So you'll see one or extreme or another when I create my art. Most of the art that you see on my website is made with pastel matte, but I am starting to branch out. I just did this beautiful magpie painting with these two birds in the air that I used on watercolor paper, and I combined PanPastel with water miscible oil, and I love the effects because PanPastel loves to stick to anything sticky. So it doesn't work well over acrylic because once acrylic dries, it becomes very smooth, but it does work great for like an oil paint that doesn't move but stays wet. And as long as you don't push hard on it, the pastel just glides over it and just sticks into it, which I love. Now when I switch colors, I'm going to wipe it on the paper towel and it is good to use again. So that is part of why I love this medium. Now I've got my turquoises laid in. I think the next color I'm just going to do some brighter yellows. I don't use yellow as much as I do the orange, pink, and blue. I don't know where or why I decided that those were just my favorite colors. Turquoise has always been my favorite color for as long as I can think. But I just love the way the oranges and pinks in PanPastel go with it. Unfortunately, it turns a little green with the black, but we will roll with it because, like I said, most of this is going to end up turning to be more orange and pinky. Okay, I am not liking the way this yellow is turning out, so you know what? We just stop. So if you're not liking how something is looking, you don't have to continue. Let's see. Now what I might do with this, because the turquoise isn't as vibrant as I want it to be, and as I know it can be on paper. I mean, you look at what's in the pan here and you look at what the paper has, and it's a very dirty look, I guess, to it. Not quite as vibrant. And so I might paint on here. I'm just gonna block in some color. Let's move along here, right? All right, so what I might do is I like to mix the orange and the pink together so it's not too much of one or the other. I'll seal it with a rubbing alcohol. Since this paper doesn't hold quite as many layers, I will seal it with a rubbing alcohol, and then I can do some more layers on the top. If I was working in pastel mat, I wouldn't necessarily have to do that, but for some reason on this paper today, it's just decided to be less fun, less vibrant, and I'm not a fan. Now, you may have noticed if you came across this video or if you looked at my channel that I have very few videos out there. And this is all new to me. So I would love if you have anything that you want to explore or learn, let me know. But honestly, the reason why I am motivated to start creating videos is because when I first started drawing and painting, I guess you could say for the second time, I was interested in drawing toward the end of high school. That was when I got a drawing teacher who gave me my first set of Prismacolor pencils back before they were really famous, as far as I know. And that just, those bright colors had me hooked. And that was the first time I was ever interested in anything like truly art related. There's been glimpses here and there, but nothing major. I went to an online school for video game design and animation, but that school was actually proven fraudulent. You may know the Art Institute of Pittsburgh. And so needless to say, I learned a tiny bit and did not finish through there. But it was several years I just used, craftiness to do presents and things like that. Never took it seriously. And after I had, let's see, at that point, so 2019, beginning of 2019, I had 3 boys and I was pregnant with our daughter, and I was shocked, you could say, or all of a sudden I was hit with the realization of how much time I was wasting that wasn't adding any value to my life. I was a stay-at-home mom. I was present, great family, great marriage, things like that. But when it came down to any free time I had, I was either trying to escape through books or shows or social media or games on my phone. It hit me all of a sudden, all the time that I was wasting, and my life wasn't improving in any way for all that time. I wasn't getting better at any skills. I wasn't desiring to escape any less. And it tore me up when I had that realization. And so I made the rule for myself that whatever downtime I had, and yes, I had 3 kids and 1 on the way, and I did still have downtime. I think we all have more downtime than we realize. We just tend to spend it on our phones, or however you may find yourself spending downtime. So I made a rule for myself that I deleted games off my phones, or my phones. I only have one, sorry. My phone, deleted games. I stopped reading novels for a while. Don't get me wrong, I went back and I still love reading, sci-fi, fantasy stories, things like that. But for a while, I cut all of that out. If I was reading a book, it had to be a book on art and drawing. If I was watching a video, it had to be a tutorial on learning how to draw or paint. And if I was reading a book, it had to be, I may have said that one already. It is not easy to draw and talk at the same time, especially when you're trying to remember something. So anyway, that is what I did to eventually become a professional artist, but it was really just to improve my own life and stop escaping. And so that is my hope for this channel, is I really want to encourage you to look at the time that you are spending that's not adding value to your life. What's not getting you where you want to be? And I think creativity is a big part of that. I believe that we are all creative. I believe we were created by a creator to create. And it all takes different forms, different views. And so it's not all the same. The way you create might be by creating a beautiful garden. Maybe you create beautiful desserts, or maybe you create woodworking. You know, maybe you haven't mastered any of those because for so long you've just said, I'm not creative. I'm not creative. Maybe you heard that from somebody else. And I would just say that that is a lie that you may have been believing. And I would encourage you, just pick something. There's got to be something. I think I've heard that at like, if you're unsure what to do, look back at what your greatest desire was when you were 8 years old. 8 seems to be that age when we are starting to transition out of our big dreams and settle for the real world, as it were. And so if you look back at what were you interested in when you were 8, before the world, you know, it may be a different age for you, but before the world became a little bit more serious and a little bit more analytical, what were you interested in? And I would try that thing. YouTube has millions of teachers, millions of videos. I mean, I'm sure it's billions of videos at this point, for you to learn whatever it is. It doesn't have to be for show or display. It can be just for your private moments. But do something that makes you love this life a little more, because you only get one. I found that when I began to create, it doesn't matter what the medium is. It really doesn't even necessarily matter what the turnout is. Kind of right now, I'm not loving this painting at this moment, but I'm loving the process. And it really did help me become a better mother, a better wife, a better human. I loved myself more. I accepted myself more, even if the painting or drawing or act itself didn't look that great in the moment. It was the process of doing that really changed my life. And so that is what I want for you. Any way that I can encourage you in your own life to spend time creating, however that looks for you, and really take the time to invest in yourself. You are worth it. And I would love to, whether you send me an email, my website, mollyvandelistart, has an email that you can respond to. It's really just mollyvandelistart@gmail.com. Whether you place a comment on YouTube, I would love to hear, how can I encourage you to pursue your own dreams, even if it's just on the side, even if it's for your own mental health? How can I encourage you to do the things that add value and excitement and confidence to your life in your spare moments? I know sometimes we all have jobs that we have to work that maybe aren't our favorites. We have responsibilities, we have other things, but how can I encourage you to find the moments in your own time to brighten your day just a little bit more? All right, so you can kind of see on here, I got a little lost in my talking. It's looking pretty rough, I'm going to say. I am going to do a little bit of dark. So I use the pencil to lay in the darks, and a lot of times that is enough, but I'm going to strengthen those. So this today, just so you're aware, is really more of an exercise than it is a final painting. Like I said, more often than not, I am either using a watercolor paper where I'm using mixed media or I'm using pastel mat. If I really know that I want to keep the painting and I want it to be able to take a lot of layers. I am one when I start a painting, I go in with a plan. Usually I'm working off of a reference photo or I'm outside painting something in person. But I'm also very spontaneous, where in the moment I'm just deciding what to do next. I don't necessarily have a plan where the same time it's done the same way every time. Let's see, I want to show this side darker. All right. So as you can see, I'm mixing colors. I don't want it to be full black at this point. I like high contrast paintings and photos, so I probably will head that direction. I'm just not sure I'm ready for it right now. All right, I think I want to add a little bit of hills in the background. You can get a lot more, what's the precise with this if you wanted to. You could use a paper and lay it down so that you make sure the horizon line is straight. There's lots of things that you can do. One other goal that I had with this video is I wanted to show you how few colors you need to make something happen. I feel like all the time there's a Facebook group called PanPastel Creations, which if you're interested, you are definitely welcome to join that group. They have so many good artists and so many good teachers. A lot of the teachers that you'll find on YouTube also share their latest video information in that group. But I also see so often somebody might say, oh, you know, I bought PanPastels and I can't get the hang of them. And so my hope is to create some tutorials to show that you don't need a whole lot to give something a try. I feel like so many people will buy the full set because they think they need all the colors to get started, and then they decide, oh, I don't like this, or oh, I can't get the hang of this, and give up, and they're out, you know, however much that costs now. I'm not sure. I've had mine for several years. So if I can help anybody truly test out PanPastels, because they are such an incredible medium, if I can help you test it out without feeling like you need to buy every single color, and if I can help you just enjoy this beautiful medium that's this combination between pastels, soft pastels, and paint, I would love to do that. So some of the differences, since I'm just filling in color here. So soft pastels, let me grab one quick. So soft pastels are this gorgeous medium. They come in sticks. They're either harder or softer, but they're called soft pastels. So here's a version of harder pastels. So these ones will have a little less vibrancy, a little less thickness when you put them on the paper. They're great. They work great together. But one way the PanPastels stand out is that when you put a soft pastel on the page, it's opaque. You can't see through it. But I don't know if you've noticed throughout this painting, PanPastels are transparent. So whatever you put underneath will show through. That's part of why you can still see my underdrawing through where I've painted, which I think is very cool. It makes it very nice to work with, and works great for mixed media things. That's why I like combining it with like water miscible oil. I'm trying to think of other ways that I've used it that way. The other thing that is great about it is soft pastels. You pick the color you want and you put it on, and the way you blend it is through either optical blending, where you put colors next to each other. Maybe you put a red and a green next to each other to make it look like a brown, and so on. Or, you know, you can just kind of layer one over the top and hope that if you push them together enough, they'll make a different mix of colors. But with PanPastels, you can literally mix your own color. That's what I'm doing with the oranges and pinks. I don't want it too orange and I don't want it too pink. So why don't I do a combination of both? When I used to do, once again, I keep directing you to my website, but that's just to review past works. There is a mix of hyper-realistic paintings, or we'll just say realistic. I don't know if I ever really achieved hyper-realistic. I'm thinking of the wedding bouquets that I've done. I'm thinking of different flowers. There's European robins on my website that I've done that are very realistic. The way that I did those was not with sponges, but with makeup brushes. And I would take a piece of printer paper, and we'll just pretend this is my little makeup brush. I would blend it on the printer paper before I put it on the page, so I would get exactly the color I was looking for. Now, I don't work that way too often anymore, mostly because I am an instant gratification person and I just want color on the page, and this is a whole lot more fun. But you can go in that direction if you want just that meditative attention to detail. It certainly has its perks. Go ahead and take a makeup brush and blend directly, you can either blend directly by putting colors next to each other and blending them together, or you can blend on a piece of printer paper, which is just smooth enough that you're able to blend on the page and then pick up the pigment to put on your paper. If you do prefer realistic paintings, if that's the goal, I definitely recommend something a little closer to pastel matte. It is pricier, but for the effect, it is absolutely worth it. All right, when I first experimented with PanPastels, I was so blessed to have an aunt that had a set, and she was willing to let me borrow them and try. And I will ever be extremely grateful that she did that, because, like I said, I've heard too many horror stories of somebody buying the full set and they try a couple tutorials and they just decide they can't get the hang of it, and they're done and they're out all that money unless they sell them. So I am so grateful that she did that. And I tried it, and when I first started creating, I used colored pencils, and so PanPastels for me weren't a medium for its own sake. It was to do underneath my pencils so that it didn't take quite as long. So I could just do orange and then do the detail over the top. That's essentially how I painted the red lilies that I have. And the first time just looked terrible. It looked, let's face it, kind of like this. This one is not, I'm not loving it at this point. It's got a ways to go. So PanPastel is one of those wait and see kind of mediums. Not that you're not active, but you may not see the result you're looking for until the very end. And so I almost gave up. I had the lilies semi, like they were all filled in with the PanPastel. I think it was actually on this sanded paper, or a paper like it, and they looked terrible. And I just thought, nope, this is not going to work. There's no way I can redeem this. And I set it aside for a little bit, and then the guilt crept in, like, oh, your aunt borrowed, she lent you these PanPastels. You got to be able to tell her that you gave it a real try, not just start and stopped. So I pushed through and gave it another try, and the more layers that I put down, the better it started to look. And eventually it turned into just a beautiful painting. I did do some colored pencils on top, but that was my first time with PanPastels. And it's definitely a medium that takes a little getting used to, but it's worth it once you do. All right, so what I am not liking about this is I feel like I'm fighting the paper, honestly. So it's too much of the same color. I've blended too much. I need to bring out those darks now. I think it's past time for that. But I think what I'm going to do is, I think I might do one more layer of that turquoise and just see if I can get that to come out a little bit stronger. And I remember hearing over and over again, never, ever, ever blow on your work, but oh well. There's a lot of never evers in art, and then you find once you do them, that's where you might find your own unique methods. I admit it feels really weird to continue on with this in recording the process, even though I'm not a fan of how it is turning out. But one of my absolutely favorite artists, especially for PanPastel, please look her up because she's incredible, is Dawn Emerson. She wrote the book Pastel Innovations, which is just super wonderful and super playful. It really helped me branch out of the, I don't know, literal and, creating for the result rather than creating for the enjoyment of the process. She helped me break free of that with her videos and books. So even though this picture doesn't seem to be looking how I would like right now, one of my favorite videos of hers was on Artist Network, and it's where she is painting a bison in pastel. And she starts it, and to me it looks beautiful, but then after watching it a few times, I understand where she was coming from. It didn't have the feeling and mood that she was intending with the painting. And so she just, even though she was recording, she just goes ahead and starts over right during the recording of it. And so you get to see the artist decide that a painting just isn't working and start over. And that, to me, that was so freeing, and that makes it one of the best tutorial videos I've ever seen. So even though I'm a little struggling, and struggling on camera certainly isn't fun, I want to keep trying with this one. Let's add a little yellow. Now with the pastels, usually I try to wipe off my sponge in between, but sometimes when colors are close enough, it's not that big of a deal. All right. I think once we bring in those darks, it's going to be even better. But before I do, with pastels, because they're a transparent medium, it's good to know where your darks are going to be, but save them for last. With pastels in general, you usually do work from dark to light, but I kind of like to work medium, dark, light, because they do blend a little bit, and I don't want those darks going everywhere as I'm still trying to decide what colors to use where. And I don't, with the white, once you put the white on, it gives a chalky look. And so you absolutely want to save those for the very end. The other thing I'm doing, and they say, never to do this, but I am kind of making this up as I go. So I had my reference photo for the Lighthouse, but beyond that, I'm kind of just flying by the seat of my pants and using my remembrance of a painting I've already done as a guide. probably not the best idea, but we're going with it. All right, I'm hoping, wish me luck, that as I lay in darks, this will turn out better. I think that it's the darks that are going to tie this whole thing together. I do love these charcoal alpha color. I just got these on Amazon, but they're a dark pastel. I have to decide if I'm ready to be that bold yet, or if I want to use a regular charcoal first. I think I might, I'm a little scared. All right, let me grab a regular charcoal. These are just willow charcoal. And if you're feeling a little skittish, charcoal is a great way to ease in, I guess you could say. It can go on dark, but you can also rub it out. And, well, that was a thick Midwestern accent there. You're welcome. But it can also lighten as you blend it. You see right there. So it can be either a thicker dark, or if you touch it, it'll rub out. Now, I really liked before some of my loose scattered marks there, but I don't know if I feel like putting them back in. Sometimes I love starting with cursive in my sketches, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the best for finishing a painting. Yeah, already this is becoming much better. All right, so this is the charcoal is kind of, just for explanation, it's kind of rounded on this side. So I'm using the sharp edge on this side for these fine lines, and I'm definitely not going for perfection. I'm not really going to, I mean, obviously you can tell with the colors I chose, I'm not going for duplicating a photograph. What I'm going for here is kind of depicting that feeling of a lighthouse, that strength, and that I don't know how to describe it, except maybe that friend in time of trouble. You know, it's a beautiful thing, but it's also a strong, necessary thing if you're a boat on the water. Now that we are living in Rhode Island, it makes a whole lot more sense when you think of a coast that is so rocky, and it would be so easy to hit the rocks. A lighthouse is absolutely your guiding light, your saving grace, keeping you from sinking on the rocks. One of our favorite places to go in Rhode Island is Beavertail. I think it's Beavertail State Park, but there's a lighthouse there, and you stand above in this grassy area, but all below you is these giant rocks and these crashing waves. And I can't believe sometimes there's fishermen there, and I think they are either brave or nuts or both, but it is quite a powerful thing to be at the ocean and seeing these waves crashing on the rocks. All right, this is looking way better. I almost wish this were a live video because I would love to hear from you and ask questions and hear about you. Have you, do you live near an ocean? Have you been to the ocean? What was its effect on you? For me, I visited the ocean a lot, but I lived in Wisconsin, so, you know, not a whole lot of ocean there. So I remember the first year we went to the ocean like any chance we got. There's a saying here, you know, if anything takes longer than like 15 minutes, they say, oh, it's wicked far, you gotta pack a lunch. And so, you know, people who are used to the ocean aren't necessarily so eager to drive to it as we were that first year. But it didn't matter if my husband was off of work, you know, at 4 o'clock we were driving to the ocean, because at least we could be there for an hour or 2 hours before the sunset. In the winter, we'll drive and we'll just sit in our car and watch the waves crash. I don't know if it's because we didn't have it growing up that it hits us so much. I always thought, you know, oh, mountains or ocean. I'm definitely a mountain person, but that was before I lived next to the ocean. I don't think I ever want to leave the ocean again. And I am overdue for a beach visit. I think it's been a couple weeks. Oh, maybe it was last week before. Anyways, overdue. So how about you? Are you an ocean person? Are you one that's like, ugh, get me away from that sand? I hate how it gets everywhere. What is your, or should I say, where is your favorite place to be that inspires you, makes you feel alive? Before we got to the ocean, my favorite place was Hayward, Wisconsin. To me, if I compare something to Hayward, Wisconsin, that means I am comparing it to a peaceful, restful place where you can just be in the quiet and enjoy nature. So there's times here at home when, especially where we are, we live in a bunch of pine trees. We live a little bit out in the woods, and it feels like Hayward. It feels like that peaceful solitude, that out in nature. All right. Hold on, I have a little girl needing my attention. I think this painting is starting to look a whole lot better. My rocks are looking a little funny and a little cartoony, but can we pretend that's just a style choice? Let's recap here. So right now I am using just a charcoal to fill in. I think this willow charcoal is like $3 or $4. Somebody you know probably already has some. It's not expensive. If you are looking to just learn to draw, then this is a good place to start with, because it's so forgiving, even almost more than a pencil. Because if you're, you know, drawing on paper, that's not a good example. If you're drawing on paper and you wipe it away, then you just have this beautiful mid-tone and you can go back over it with darks. You're definitely not committed to anything, so it's very forgiving in that way. And so I would start with that. And if you are interested in PanPastels, I would recommend pick your favorite color and go from there. You know, get maybe 3 colors. I think last time I checked, which it has been a while, so it's probably changed. It was like $8 a pan, but I need you to understand, I've had these pans for almost 6 years now. I've created dozens of large paintings with them, and I still have them. So even though I've replaced this turquoise, I'm still using the other one. It's just thinner. It's like this pink one. So it's $8, but that's 6 years worth of consistent work for one color. I think that's a pretty good return on investment when you consider some of the other mediums that you might use. You have to use all of them very quickly. It's kind of like acrylic versus oil. You know, if you're using acrylic, it's cheaper, but you usually have to use a big glob of paint to accomplish what you want to do. Whereas with oil, you can use a tiny bit and it goes a lot farther. So even though they're more expensive, they may last you better if you decide that's your go-to medium. All right, I need to loosen up here. I think part of why I'm not liking this is because I've been a little too rigid. All right. Ew, don't like that. Whoops. You're getting a little bit of the inner dialogue that happens. I feel like when you watch artists, especially artists who've been doing things for, 20 plus years. They've been teaching great. It seems like they know everything, and so they just do, instead of experiment, instead of try and go, whoops, shouldn't have done that. I think we feel like when we're doing something in front of other people, we have to have it all together. But art especially is a million tiny decisions, and some of them work out and some of them don't. But the one thing you do not want to do is stop making those decisions. Even if that decision is, well, this one's done, I'm moving on. Oh, I'm actually, now that I've taken a look back, I'm kind of liking this. All right, so that was charcoal, regular willow charcoal. And I'm just going to use this one that I showed you before. I forget what it's called. Alpha Color Soft Pastel. So it's a really rich soft pastel black, just to fill in some of these areas that I really want. Now what I don't want to do, and I need to remember kind of the style I'm going for, is not necessarily realistic, but not unrealistic, is because this is darker than the other charcoal, I want to use it sparingly in the areas that I want your attention to be drawn to. So I don't want to use it a whole lot down here, though I can use it to fill in some of these rock spaces. I'm not going to do it too thick because I really want your eye to stay up in this general direction. So I might use it to draw the eye, where I want you to look. So I might use it for some lines, squares, but I don't want to overdo it down here when this isn't the main place I want you to look. I really want your eyes to be up here. It always amazes me how you can have a painting that you're working on it and you're working on it and you're like, what in the world am I doing? You can be drawing for 10 years and wonder if you ever knew how to draw. And then all of a sudden at the end, it really starts to come together and you're like, hey, maybe I do know what I'm doing. All right. I think I'm going to call this done. And I want to share what I like about it is that high contrast, the lights, the darks, and the brights. What I am not a fan of is the turquoise on this paper. Just did not want to soak in and wasn't very vibrant, I guess you could say. Not as vibrant as I usually get with that color. But I have not worked on this paper in a long time, so it could just be that I've forgotten how that works. Let me try one more thing, since that is my pain point. And as an artist and just as a creative person, I want you to try things. I'm going to grab that trusty old makeup brush that I used to use when I would do detail. I just want to see if I use a makeup brush, if I can get a thicker color. And of course, my favorite brush is not in here. So I bought a set of makeup brushes on Amazon, and that's almost worse, so let's not do that. Anyway, a set of like 13 or some makeup brushes, and I found that there was one brush, and it's super tiny. It's kind of like this one, but this one's a little, oh, I guess this one is pretty good. So it's like this size, and that's what I used to do my 18 by 24 paintings in, or my 8 by 10 paintings in, was a brush this size. So that tells you what kind of detail I was going for when I used to use that brush more often. But you do find your favorite tool. Like out of these soft tools, this triangle sponge tends to be my favorite. I will show you, even though I had not wanted to overcomplicate things by having too many media, I'm opening up my soft pastels. Nope, that's the wrong side. And I'm just going to look for one that's close to that turquoise color to use on the top. Let's see, I have this trusty soft pastel box that I keep everything in. So, okay, I think it's a little lighter. Actually, it does look a little closer to what that is. Do I want that? This is pretty close, but a little darker. And let's see. I actually think I might like, all right, I'm taking out that one and maybe that's too green. All right, I'm gonna take out this one and this one. They're pretty close, but I think I might try to use that one more and use the other one for just where I want it extra bright. And let's see. Oh, that's too green. This one, just in case I want to do anything a little brighter. See, this is a problem with soft pastels, is you're like, just one color. No, now I need another color. Now I need another color. Hence, why I like to do most of my work in PanPastels, because you can mix with these, except for when the paper fights you. All right, so this one is a little too big. I don't want to break it, but so normally this thick color that I'm getting right now is closer to what I see with that turquoise if I'm using a different paper. But this paper has been sitting out for a while, I guess you could say. Like I said, this was for a class that I taught using PanPastels, where I already had the drawing on there, so it's been on here for more than a year, sitting in a space on my bookshelf. So, but another thing that is really fun is with PanPastels, you can use soft pastels over the top. You can use pencils over the top. So, excuse me, even if you're not liking how they look, you can go ahead and go over them. They are a very versatile medium that way. A little crazy. Probably should take a step back, lady. Almost makes me want to get out my other pastels, but I'm not, because this is gone on long enough, I think, for the day for an experiment. My phone probably already cut off the video. That would be a nice surprise. All right, so let me know what you think. Let me know what questions you have about PanPastels, about getting into a habit of creating, even if you don't want to be an artist. I don't know. I'm trying to think of what other questions I may have. I'm sure there's something that you thought of while you were watching this, if you lasted this long. But I would love to hear about you. What are your hobbies? What are your ways to express yourself creatively? And how can I encourage you in that? All right. Thanks for joining me today.